Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Breaking the Game podcast. I'm Stephen Gillespie, and joining me, as he has been for the most part lately, is Austin Carr. Austin, I know that you had, I shared with our listeners and viewers on our last episode that you had an emergency come up. I didn't divulge names or what happened or anything, but just kind of explain that you weren't going to be able to be with us. But glad to have you back, man, and just continue to pray for you and your family, brother.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. And I'm glad to be back. I'm excited to be back on the show. I definitely missed doing it with you over the weekend. Yeah, we did have a little bit of emergency, but things worked out about as good as can be expected. So
that's good, right, man. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that everything's going well. But a lot of stuff has happened since especially since our last talking about a week of NBA playoff and news happened. Before we get to the playoffs, though, another award that I feel like you probably saw coming a little bit more clear than I did. I'm still a little upset about it. So, with that being said, I'll go ahead and let you open us up on our NBA news as far as the awards that have been given.
Yeah. Brandon Ingram won Most Improved Player. I don't know if it's something necessarily that I saw coming more than you. I feel like the league likes perimeter players more than big men anymore, and I just kind of felt like that was what gave him the edge. Not that it wasn't deserved, though. He improved his role, he improved his minutes. He played about the same minutes, but he improved his scoring by
about the same. Yeah.
He had the same minutes. He had about 5 or 6 more points per game. His shooting was tremendously better. He was the number one option on a team that everybody thought was going to try to push for the playoffs there. And, Bam, I think who you picked, and he was definitely deserving as well. I think he doubled his scoring, doubled his assist output for the season from last year. But, I don't think they could have gone wrong either way.
Yeah, I felt like, well, for one, that my guy Devontae Graham wasn't anywhere on the ballot, and that made me greatly upset. And then not only that, I felt like out of the two guys, I felt like, Bam Adebayo, not only did he improve his minutes, right, but he improved his role. He went from being a, just a rotational big man behind, Hassan Whiteside, and then he steps into this role, and then he's, second. You could probably twist or construe an argument that he may be the most important player on the Heat. I wouldn't agree with that, but I'm just saying that there are some that do. I just felt like, the points, the rebounds, the defense, averaging a double-double with 5 assists, not a lot of big men do that, you know what I mean? So, he's doing stuff that hasn't been done a lot in NBA history, whereas we see these wings who are high draft picks, put up big numbers all the time, you know what I mean? So, I just felt like this may be the NBA's way of trying to make up for that investment that they did with the New Orleans Pelicans, where Zion got hurt, and they invested heavily on the television programming, and then created the play-in tournament specifically for this team. It felt like, and I just felt like they had to get some sort of return off of the investment that they put on the team. And not that I don't think that Brandon Ingram is a bad player. I just felt like he wasn't as deserving, because not only did Bam's numbers go up along with Ingram's, but also those minutes per game. You know what I mean? So he was. When I look at this, I'm thinking literally the most improved. I know that there is a thought out there that if you improve from kind of rookie to star status, that's probably one of the more difficult jumps. Is that kind of where you fall in line with on this?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, and I also feel like too. Ingram was definitely the number one option on that team most of the year. And, we saw he didn't struggle with the Lakers. He was an 18-point a game scorer the year before. So I think people probably saw this coming. But just like you said, the fact that he was in prime time so much, they were on TV a lot. The NBA did invest a lot into the Pelicans for, not a whole lot of return. So I kind of see what you're saying there. The argument for Bam, though, too, you could say he's kind of made a star leap as well. He's definitely going to be an all-star, multiple times in his career, I think. I think we can both agree with that. Ingram, I just think the fact that he was the leading guy on his team is probably what gave him the edge. I did read that it was really close. Bam had over 30 first place votes, so it wasn't it wasn't very far off in between the two guys. That's for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not super upset, but part of me does feel like Bam got extremely robbed. But I mean, it's most improved player. It's not like MVP, and hopefully we don't have that much controversy. I think you and I
Mm-hmm.
kind of fall along the same thought process as to who we think's on there, right? But
Right.
you know, it is interesting to see these most improved player. Awards and stuff like come out because it means a lot for the history of not only the game but for the players involved as well. So
Right, and it does kind of feel like in past years the guy who's been the most improved player has made a little bit bigger leap maybe than Brandon Ingram did this year. It seems like a lot of years it takes a guy that's not necessarily an unknown, but definitely not someone that people think is going to be a star. And I think a lot of people already knew Brandon Ingram was going to be what he was this year. So I don't know if it was as surprising of a leap that he made as maybe Bam was, or Devontae Graham, especially like you said. I don't think anybody saw him coming like that.
no.
And there is something to be said too about taking on a bigger role, which both of those guys did. Whereas I guess Ingram did. I mean, how can you not take on a bigger role when you're not playing behind LeBron or with LeBron? But
True.
he didn't, like you said, he didn't play really any more minutes. He had the ball in his hands just about as much last year. He ran the offense quite a bit for the Lakers last year as well. So, it could have gone either way.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. And like I said, it's not so much the fact that Ingram got it. I think is why I'm mad. It's just that I'm mad that Graham was nowhere to be seen on this list at all.
Right.
So,
Well, he was deserving, that's for sure.
I certainly felt that way. I didn't I didn't make that point very ambiguous at all there. But
Right.
we can move on from this award that I just don't agree with, and we can get to some of the things that I think that we can agree with, and that is our predictions for how we felt the playoffs would go. And for the most part, I think that all of my predictions so far have come true. And right now we have OKC against Houston right now. I did say that if Westbrook played, that I felt like Houston would advance, and I know that they kind of have a small lead in the first quarter right now. But we'll see how that goes. Maybe we can update the viewers and listeners here in a little while as we go.
Yeah,
but the first series that I want to discuss with you is the LA Clippers against the Dallas Mavericks. Now, from our last episode that I recorded, and I had Couch Coach of the Couch Coach Live podcast fill in for you, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And it was great. It was great getting to talk with him. But obviously miss working with you, man. I've greatly appreciated what you've done. Oh, and we didn't get a chance to celebrate, but we cracked the 400 downloads for the month of August.
That's pretty awesome. That's a big month. That's much appreciated to everybody that watches or listens. So that's really cool. Thanks, guys.
And thank you, Austin, because you've put in a lot of great work, man. And
Good. I appreciate
it's been a blessing to have you on the show. Absolutely. But we can stop being nice to each other and talk about these Clippers and Mavericks.
Start arguing about some stuff, right?
Yes, absolutely. So the Clippers advanced 4-2. I don't know. I think I might have said 5 or 6 games. I can't remember exactly. I'm not gonna gloat too much, but I think that we both did end up going with the Clippers, if I'm not mistaken. Probably not in the fashion that we would have anticipated. Kristaps Porzingis. We can start from there. Another leg injury to the 7'3" big man.
Yeah, leg injuries on big guys like that scare me a lot. They have a hard time overcoming that kind of stuff. I mean, look at DeMarcus Cousins. Every time he looks like he's going to come back, he gets hurt. Greg Oden's career was completely ended because of it. It's all throughout the history of the NBA. There's been multiple examples of this kind of thing. So it does worry you, especially with his frame. He is a fairly strong guy, but for his height, he's still, he looks like a twig out there compared to some of those guys.
Right.
And, that might help him, though, that he's not real big and heavy for his size. That might help him, recover a little bit better. But I don't know if the Mavs have this duo that we were so sure that they were going to have for a long time. If he's as injury prone as it seems, that's one thing I would worry about going forward. If I was Dallas, is how many opportunities are you going to give him before you decide that, hey, maybe this guy's just too fragile.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that would have to do with the free agency, and not to change the subject, but that they're a big contender in the 2021 sweepstakes, potentially to try to land Giannis Antetokounmpo to land that
Right.
international big three. I think that would be something to behold in of itself,
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't be a lot asked of KP other than just block shots and shoot threes with
Mm-hmm.
the rest of that roster, right? But going back to the series, the Clippers did advance 4-2, and then in Game 6, Luca continued to be Luca. It's been nice to see him go against this very much so a Doc Rivers style of team where
Mm-hmm.
his mental toughness is going to be tested as well as his physical toughness, and Luca responded in kind. Even though it was a kind of a disappointing loss. It was 111 to 97, and that was
Mm-hmm.
way back on the 30th. I know that there's been a whole mess of games been played between now and then, but
Right.
from the last time that we recorded, this game occurred, and Luka finished with 38, 9, and 9 on 53% shooting from the field, 44% from deep, and only 50% from the free throw line. I believe that was on one of two or four attempts. It wasn't very many
Mm-hmm.
attempts at all. And, our guy Kawhi Leonard had another great game, 33, 14, and 7. Shot 60% from the field, 25% from deep, 100% from the line. Paul George is continuing to be kind of hit and miss. Had 15 points, only shot 31% from the field, 28% from deep, 50% from the free throw line. And Luka didn't get much help in this game at all. Finney Smith was the second leading scorer with 16, and Tim Hardaway Jr. was third and with 10 points. There, Austin. What did you think of the way that this series ended?
Well, it kind of ended how I expected. The Mavs were just overpowered in the end. The Clippers are one of the legitimate championship contenders right now, and obviously the Mavericks are looking more like a team of the future. They need to get some more help around him for sure. They need to get some guys that can defend a little bit. Having three guys in double figures is not usually probably going to get done for you. One thing I didn't like to see. Now I'm a big fan of clean, hard fouls. There's nothing wrong with like Shaq said, touch them up a little bit. But
Yeah,
what happened in
making
the
worth
end
their
of that
trouble.
game was definitely a little more than that. And what happened too when Marcus Morris stepped on Doncic's foot. You can say what you want, whether it was intentional or not. To me, it looked like he was looking right down at it. I don't want to speak for someone else's mindset, but that just seemed a little suspect. And then, in game 6, he hit him right in the face like that. Like you can give a guy a hard foul and not go after their head. And I didn't like that too much. I think there's a big difference between being a tough player and being a dirty player. And, far be it for me to call him dirty. He hasn't really had a huge reputation of that, but Marcus Morris that was a little over the top for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean the Morris brothers by definition. I mean as far as today's NBA goes, excuse me there. Um, they're probably some of the more dirty players in the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the NBA that we grew up with, where
Right.
saw Robert Horry hip check Steve Nash, or clotheslines in midair from Artest, and
Mhm.
things like that. They're probably as dirty as it gets in the NBA today. The Morse brothers are, and
Yeah.
Marcus was. I mean, you could say, "Oh, that one particular play, I didn't mean to do that," but where were you at on the rest of those plays? You know what I mean? Like
Right. Once it happens more than once.
you put yourself under a microscope, right? I mean, ask Draymond Green. It cost probably the Warriors an NBA championship one season, right? So
Definitely.
it's hard to kind of be like, oh yeah, that one out of the 5 dirty plays that you did, we'll sweep that one under the rug,
Right.
Yeah, but you look at just the rest of the statistics involved with this game, right? Like the Mavs actually out rebounded the Clippers by 13, and the Clippers outside of George and Kawhi had a couple other guys in double figures, right? Zubac actually had 15. That was a very impressive game. They played him a lot more in this game than they typically did, and it did give Doncic a little bit of trouble for some stints, right? And then Reggie Jackson with 14. The Clippers overall, though, were 6% better from the floor on only one more attempt. They were 8% better from deep on 8 fewer attempts. They were 12 of 13 from the free throw line, which is 92%. Just quick math there, according to my calculations. Shout out Shaquille O'Neal. And the Mavericks were 10 of 17, only 58%. The Clippers were plus 10 in rebounds, they were +2 in assists and +10 in points in the paint. And then the Mavericks had one less turnover and six less fouls. So when you look at these stats, you could say, yeah, the Mavs did all right because they didn't turn the ball over as much, they didn't foul as much. But that toughness that the Clippers did display, it carried over into areas like rebounds, right, and points in the paint. And ultimately, that's where the game was won to me, Austin.
Yeah, and it is a little cliche, but in the playoffs, it's cliche for a reason. Rebounding, not turning the ball over, which the Mavericks did turn the ball over much, but missing free throws, missing 7 out of 17 free throws is a lot.
Yes.
A few of those here and there can really turn momentum. You're within 4 instead of 6, or you're within 7 instead of 10. And all of a sudden that lead is a little bit less, and it's a little bit easier to overcome. And those kind of mental things do make a difference. And it's just disheartening when you get free throws and you just miss them. Giannis missed a couple in the game I just finished watching too, and he was definitely kicking himself after the game. But not to get off topic, but it just seems like it's kind of been a running theme these playoffs. A lot of teams are losing games on, real close games on just little plays here and there, giving up a timely offensive rebound or a bad foul, or, missing free throws at the end of a game. And, being beaten by 10 on the boards isn't something to, sweep under the rug either. That's a big difference.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah. And notably, too, for the Clippers, they continue to miss Patrick Beverley in these games. Ultimately, though, my biggest takeaway from this series is, I picked the Clippers to win it all this year. So I am obviously happy to see them advance because, they're just showing what I saw in them prior to these playoffs kicking up. I just hate it for Kawhi Leonard, and here's why. All these dirty plays that are happening against this likable, lovable Luka Doncic, who's averaging triple doubles, he's smiling, and now he's standing up for himself a little bit more against these dirty, rough, hooligan Los Angeles Clippers players. People are like, yeah, Luka, way to not put up with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Poor Kawhi Leonard is just minding his own business. He's not getting in anyone's face. He's just out there being a Terminator, putting up 30 and 10 and a couple assists and
every game,
quietly
and they don't
just being, quietly just being one of, if not the best performer in these playoffs. And it's all getting kind of diluted a little bit because you have your guys like, Marcus Morris and your Patrick Beverley's kind of taking away a little bit of that momentum, and Montrezl Harrell taking, the attention off of the good that the Clippers are doing and focusing in on as reasons why you shouldn't want the Clippers to succeed, and why if Kawhi wins, it's because he plays on a dirty team now, and I hate that for him.
Right. I saw something on social media that said the Los Angeles Clippers have officially taken over for the Golden State Warriors. It's the most hated team in basketball. And I mean, it's kind of true. Like, there never have been a huge fan base of Clippers fans. Like, there's just not a whole lot of diehard Clippers fans, partly because they share LA with the Lakers, partly because they've really never been that good. But, Kawhi has a pretty have a big fan base. Paul George has his fan base, and I think this is definitely the most popular Clippers team there's ever been, and to take away from that is definitely a bad thing. But that being said, I think that kind of gives the Clippers part of their identity. They do have a little bit of an edge. They've got 3 or 4 guys on that team that you would say are, scrappy, hard-nosed type players, maybe a little bit dirty, which, isn't a good thing. But having an edge isn't necessarily a bad thing, and you kind of need that physicality in the playoffs. Teams like the Miami Heat are going to be really physical with you. The Lakers are going to be big and physical, so they need that edge a little bit, I think. So I think it actually helps them kind of have an identity. Kawhi Leonard is a great player, and he's a superstar, believe me, but he's not really like a vocal leader at all. And so I don't think
we get to see, right?
At least from the outside looking in. So I don't know that he really instills his personality on his team as much as some other superstars do. Like LeBron's teams are LeBron's teams. The Houston Rockets built their entire organization around James Harden. And the Clippers made a lot of moves to bring Kawhi Leonard in, but he even when he was with Toronto, I mean, it was his team, but it was everyone called it, it was a great team effort. And when he's with the Clippers now, it seems like maybe because he's not so vocal, he doesn't always get as much credit as he deserves, as a lot of those other guys do. And if that's how he wants it to be, then more power to him.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just tough because right, you like if you're a team, if you're an analyst, right, and you say like this is a team that I want to win, it's like you kind of have to ride with those kind of blemishes or negative comments and stuff like that. Like you have to say, yeah, Marcus Morris, clocking Luka Doncic is a good thing for the Clippers. You kind of have to like justify them, and it feels very much like a Doc Rivers teams. It almost harkens back to those Boston Celtics championship eras, right?
Oh
Where
yeah.
KG made some kind of questionable, moves on the court. Rajon Rondo did some questionable things on the court. Paul Pierce. And to me, Kawhi is almost like Ray Allen in a way. Like Ray Allen didn't get in much arguments or conversations at all. He was just surrounded by these very emotional guys, and he just went out there and just put you away quietly.
Right.
You know what I mean? He let other people do the talking for him, and that's kind of like what I see Kawhi Leonard's role being as far as like emotionally on this team. Obviously, he's their best player.
Right, for sure. I like that analogy for sure, and definitely makes sense. Doc Rivers does kind of always have those, blue collar style teams. They're not going to let you have any easy buckets. I think he's still kind of a little bit of an old school style of coach in that way. But looking forward, when they play the next series we're going to talk about is the Denver Utah game, but they're obviously going to play Denver in the next round. I'm not too sure how much trouble Denver's going to give them. I don't think they can slow them down defensively at all. And I mean, we'll talk about this here in a sec, but obviously Jamal Murray's been out of this world. But how many good defenders do the Clippers have that they can put on him, that they can throw at him? So that's going to be an interesting matchup to see if he can continue lighting it up the way he has.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And the two games that have happened since we last talked the playoffs were on the 30th. There was an outstanding 119 to 107 point outburst. Both Murray and Mitchell Murray had 50 points. Mitchell only had 44. Murray finished with 56 and 5, shot 70% from the field, 75% from deep on 9 of 12 shooting, only 77% from the free throw line. It was just crazy to me. And then Jokic kind of partnered alongside him with 22 on 46% shooting from the field, 3 of 5 from deep. Grant had 18 on 4 of 7 shooting from deep. Mitchell had 44, 6 and 5 on 56% shooting from the field. Only shot 69% from 3 on 9 of 13 shooting, 100% from the line. Conley Jr. was their next best player. He had 21, 6 and 5, 53% from the field, 66% from deep, and 75% from the free throw line. What did you at that first game? And au contraire, the final game was a completely different type of different outing.
Well, I think you have to put Game 6. The loss obviously has to be clearly on Donovan Mitchell missing those 4 threes. He makes those 4 threes, which he should have obviously done. It would have been a tie game.
Right. Like, why couldn't you be 13 to 13?
Exactly. I mean, how are you going to miss? This is not the time for that. Yeah. No, obviously those two guys, it's been an incredible back and forth matchup. I saw something on, I think, ESPN. Somebody was saying that they should just play one-on-one for Game 7.
Yes.
And, I think everybody, just as many people probably would have tuned in to watch that than watch the actual game. It's kind of hard to determine, is it bad defense or is it just that good of offense?
Bad defense.
It's definitely bad defense. But you can only, you still have to make the shots, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's just some crazy stats from the 3-game stretch that Jamal Murray had. I marked a few of these things down in my notes. He scored 142 points in 3 games. That's the third most ever in a 3-game playoff span, trailing only Michael Jordan in 1988 and Jerry West in 1965. He's the second player.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. He's the second player in 20 years with three 25-point halves in a playoff series. The only other player to do that was Allen Iverson in the 2001 Eastern Conference Finals. He scored 50 points in Game 6 on 24 field goal attempts, which is the fewest attempts in a 50-point game since Bob Cousy in 1953. And he hit
Google him,
30.
folks.
He hit 30 free throws in that game. And he's the first player since Jordan in 1993 to score 40 plus in 3 straight playoff games. So, nothing new here, just a run of the mill kind of week for Jamal Murray. No, obviously he's doing things that we haven't really seen in a very, very long time. But he won me quite a bit of FanDuel money with that comeback. I actually bet a little bit on them to come back and win the series when they were down 3-1. So I was pretty happy about that.
I hope that you got a nice little bit of money there, bro.
Yeah, nothing too crazy. I try not to spend too much money on it, but it was nice to get that win. That's for sure. Then the game 7 obviously was a completely different story. It was 80-78. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Yeah, it was just a rock fight, and all these guys, they had to have been dog tired. You look at their misses; most of them were short. Their shots were flat. It was, and it took what I think a 13-point third quarter for Donovan Mitchell to get the Jazz back into this, because at one point they were down double digits almost going into the fourth quarter, and it felt like the Nuggets were just going to run away with it. But Donovan Mitchell was like, all right, as tired as I am, I got to put the team on my back and go to work. And it was just a phenomenal effort all the way around. Now, it wasn't pretty, like I said. He was 40% from the field on 9 of 22 shooting, 25% from deep on 2 of 8, and 100% from the line again. But this was Jokic's night to shine for the Denver Nuggets. He had been taking a back seat and likely as he should have done against when you got a guy putting up 250 in a 40 piece. You just kind of let him keep doing his thing until the wheels fall off, right? But Jokic finished with 30, 14, and 4, 52% shooting from the field, 40% from deep, and 100% from the line. So he had a 50-40-90 night in Game 7, and that's how, to me, that's obviously what ended up making all the difference for the Nuggets there, Austin.
Well, yeah, definitely. What you said about them being tired in Game 7 was probably true. Murray looked bad again too, or looked bad finally too. 7 of 21, 1 of 6 from 3. That kind of says that bad 3-point shooting kind of says his legs probably weren't all the way under him. Jokic kind of probably got an advantage there with the game slowing down a little bit less up and down, maybe a little bit more half court. Let him get into the flow of his offense a little bit better. He's not the most athletic guy, but he's obviously extremely talented. So I think that might have helped him. Free throw shooting in Game 7 was even. Both teams made 10 free throws. Utah only rebounded them by 2 on the board. They were plus 12 in the paint. It was a pretty even back and forth game. Obviously, Utah had a last shot right at the end there to win. Another cool thing, Rudy Gobert actually had 10 points and 12 rebounds in the fourth quarter. I saw that was the first double-double in the fourth quarter of a playoff game ever. So
wow, cool. Interesting. I would have never pegged him to be the first to do that.
Right. I didn't think so either, but I guess it's the first time it's ever happened in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. So, he stepped up.
Little minuscule stats.
Right. Yeah, I have this subscription to a website that gives you this little email every day with crazy stats from history or that date, and so that's where I got a lot of the stuff from.
Right.
That's pretty interesting little tidbits to throw in there. I think we both picked Denver to win this series. I think I picked Denver to win in 5 games. So obviously, I didn't give Utah as much credit as they deserve. It was just a strange way to end such a offensively geared series,
Yeah, and it was almost being advertised as hey, you don't want to miss this match. It's guaranteed to be fireworks involved in the show, and
right.
There were mainly only a couple of fireworks lit this entire time. And you did say that we did say prior to that we would pick Denver, but as the series progressed and Denver being down 3-1 with the way that those matches were going, I was like, there's no way Denver can win 3 straight. And lo and behold, here they are. So I'm glad to see that my long-term vision was true, and my short term gut check was like, no, you need to stick with your original thought
Right.
process there.
I think we both need to work on sticking to our guns a little bit in some of these series because at least me for sure, I've definitely wavered and should have just kept with my original picks.
Yeah, and what else was big for the Nuggets in that game is that Gary Harris came back. He didn't really do much. He only finished with 4 points and 3 rebounds, but his defense was actually pretty solid in this matchup. You know, there was a couple times where he made some great stops, played good help defense, and really helped the Nuggets along into winning this game. And you know, hopefully we will continue to see that improve, and he'll get his legs underneath them and be able to be a bigger part of the Nuggets rotation, depending on how Michael Porter Jr. plays. Right.
Right. And if he keeps shooting the way he did in game 6 and 7, it's probably going to open the door for Gary Harris to get some more minutes there. And, going forward, it's only going to help him. They've played with him for, I think they said it's been 6 months since he's played a game before that game. But, they're used to playing without him, but it's got to be, a little bit of a shot in the arm for everybody to see him back out there with him, even if it's just, a mental thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, did you have any other notes that you wanted to cover for that series, or are you ready to talk about?
I'm good to move on if you are.
Man, I'm gonna let you open for this one because boy, howdy, am I just ready to heap on a big "I told you so" to anybody that doubted me.
All right, I'll go ahead. We're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat. We have notes for game one of the series. The second game actually just ended a little bit ago.
We
Milwaukee
can
did
talk a little bit
lose.
about that, yeah.
Yeah, Milwaukee did lose the first game to Miami, 115 to 104. They were without Eric Bledsoe. Jimmy Butler is the story of the whole thing so far. Obviously, he had a postseason career high 40 points. Dragic 27, 6 and 5, shot 60% from the field, 40% from three. It's kind of the same old thing we saw against Indiana. The Heat keep it close, and then in the fourth quarter, Jimmy Butler makes big plays. I'll kind of just let you take it from here.
Yeah, and Jimmy Butler had 40 points, which was a postseason high. He also had 4 boards and 2 assists. He had 60. He was 65% from the field, 100% from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. Goran Dragic had 27.6 and 5 on 60% shooting from the field, 40% from deep, 100% from the line. There were two other Heat members in double-figure scoring. That was Bam Adebayo with 12 and Tyler Hero with 11. Crowder just missed his streak of double-digit scoring. He only had 9, and he hit some pretty timely three-pointers in there. What really spoke volumes to me was the Bucks' inability to get offense going, right? Because they had good production from Chris Middleton, and that was a guy that we had been harping on the entire time that they were playing the Magic and was saying, you can't come in and play this way against the Heat. They'll make you pay for it. Middleton came in and was very solid. He had 28, 6 and 5. He was 50% from deep. Lopez had 24 points, only 1 rebound, but with the way that the Bucks play, it's like a team box out, and Giannis gets the ball and pushes it up. It's very much like a Russell Westbrook or a James Harden style scheme where you want your playmaker to get the ball and have everyone else spotted up ahead of him ahead of time, right? So that 1 rebound, I'm not really focused in on that much. But Giannis, it wasn't really necessarily a poor game, right? Because he almost had a triple double. He had 18, 10, and 9. He was 50% from the floor, 40% from deep. And I want to pause right there because the James Harden criticism, that still runs through almost every NBA circle that like all this dude does is run and dunk. That is not true. If you watch him play a game, he will pull up from deep and he's pretty consistent. And he's gotten better as the year has progressed. He's gotten better. But remember, the one area that I told you that I'm concerned with of the Bucks against the Heat was the free throw percentage. And he missed 8 free throws in this game. He was 4 of 12 from the free throw line. And that's an area that the Heat will make you pay for. Those are what I call winning stats, and they didn't win those stats in that game.
Right, and that's kind of what I've been saying all along about the Heat is that when I say they make the winning plays down the stretch, they get big rebounds, they don't miss free throws. They're a good shooting team. They get stops when they need to. You can say Giannis had a good game. He did have a good game, but he's got to be more aggressive. He can't take 12 shots. He needs to take 24 shots. He needs to double that output. And especially if he's shooting 60%, like you said, he does do a lot of running and dunking, and I mean, it's to be expected. He can get from the 3-point line to the rim with one step, like it's unreal.
If you
And
can do it, why not, right?
yeah, exactly. And he does pull up for three, and he did shoot well in that game. He just needs to be more aggressive. And Middleton had a good game, but him and Giannis both kind of disappeared in the fourth quarter. They combined for like 2 of 8 from the field for 8 points, I think, in the fourth quarter. You've got to get more out of them in the timely moments. And that's, where Miami kills you. Jimmy Butler always makes big plays. He has all year. He has for a few years now. I watched him a lot when he was with the Bulls, and he was kind of the same role for them. He made a lot of big plays at the end of games. They had Dwayne Wade there then too, so he kind of deferred to him a little bit. But Jimmy Butler's kind of always been a guy who just makes the right play at the right time more often than not. And Milwaukee can't give up that kind of a rebounding edge and expect to win. That's one of the things that they really did really well during the regular season was defend the paint and rebound, and that's the 2 things that they didn't do well in game 1.
Yeah, and you look at that plus 18 and points in the paint, that Miami was better at. They were plus 3 on turnovers, so you can't turn the ball over against Miami. There was only a 1 foul difference. You can kind of wishy-wash that one away or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, the plus 12 on the boards and the plus 5 on the offensive rebounds that you're giving an Eric Spoelstra coach team with a guy like Jimmy Butler, who, where do we put him as far as rankings go in the NBA? Because he always feels like the guy that's like, he's not really a superstar, but he's like a high star. Where does that fall? Just kind of gut check.
I mean, honestly, I don't know that he's quite at superstar level. I think if he takes the Heat to the finals or even the Eastern Conference Finals this year and makes a deep playoff run, you kind of have to put him in that category. I think he's making a good case for it. Since the season restarted, he's kind of been the finisher for this team. And, we always talk about in the playoffs, teams need a guy that can, close out the game. They can get a big bucket when they need him to. And believe it or not, in the first 2 games of this series, Butler's been the guy, and Giannis really hasn't. And so, I mean, I would say that these playoffs are going a long way to push him into that superstar category for sure.
Yeah, and just to update the listeners and viewers right now, going into halftime in Game 7, Houston is up by 2 points, 61-59, and that's going to be the series that we discuss next. But right. And we can just kind of highlight a little bit on what we just saw today in another crazy I keep saying hashtag not an upset because Milwaukee's kryptonite all season long has been the Miami Heat. Even when they beat them in the bubble, it took a heroic fourth quarter effort, and it took everything going wrong for Miami for them to lose in their third matchup. So I don't know, man. Like, Miami beating Milwaukee is not an upset. I get the point that, yeah, they're the 4th seed and that, yeah, Milwaukee is the 1st seed and they're expected to make a run at a championship this season. I get that. But to me, when I watch them, like, this is not an upset to me. And talking about the game that just happened earlier, right before we recorded, is when the results came out. But Miami beat the Bucks 116-114 in a close game most of the way through. And I just want to speak on the last little bit of the game, and I think that will be sufficient to kind of cover the highlights. The 3-point shot foul that happened as Chris Middleton was shooting over Goran Dragic, I thought was a botch call. And from what I've been seeing, any kind of suspect play like that, you can't challenge under 2 minutes. It's kind of borrowing from the NFL. And Miami didn't have their challenge anyway. They unsuccessfully challenged the play way back in the first quarter. So that's probably going to bolster any coach's philosophy on no, we're going to save these for the last quarter of the game. I think, and I don't think Eric Spoelstra will ever challenge in the first quarter ever again.
Probably
after
not.
That. But going to that play, he couldn't challenge it anyway. But what I'm so used to seeing is the NBA reviewing those plays, and it seemed like the Bucks almost ran a no huddle offense to the free throw line to get those 3 free throws up,
Mhm.
and that wasn't even reviewed at all. And to me, that was very suspicious. And then we saw Middleton hit all three of those games, or excuse me, all three of those free throw attempts to tie the game. And then we saw Jimmy Butler get the ball, advance it all the way to his end of the court, shot a fadeaway 2 point shot. We saw Giannis actually commit a foul. And they did review that play. They actually reviewed that one that the foul was called on Jimmy Butler, and Giannis wrapped around him, and he rightfully, with 0 seconds on the clock, all Jimmy Butler had to do was hit one free throw to win the game. He hit the first one. The second one was just for formality, right? Um, what was your thought process when you saw those last two plays and how it seemed how they were just handled so differently?
Well, it doesn't make sense why they wouldn't review one and review the other. I think that's the worst thing about all of it. Say what you will about the two fouls. I would like to see them both be no calls. Honestly, I think the second foul looked like more of a foul than the first one, but I don't really think it was. The shot was already away. I don't think it affected the shot too much on Jimmy Butler's shot. But the one with Middleton, I think, should have been reviewed. It's a tough way to end the playoff game.
I thought Dragic had great defensive position established. He didn't slide underneath them. He gave them plenty of landing space. Arms straight up, didn't lean, just stood there.
I agree completely. That's what I mean. Like, it doesn't make sense that they would, within a minute of each other, within a couple of plays of each other, they make two controversial calls and handle them completely differently. Regardless of which way they go with the calls, there needs to be consistency with how they handle it, I think. And I think going forward, that's something that the league might look at. I don't know about the last 2 minutes being able to challenge or not. I almost think if we're trying to get the call right, it shouldn't make a difference. I think if you're either trying to get it right or you're not. And the point in time in the game shouldn't make a difference. But like I said, it's a tough way to end a really close playoff game, with no time left on the free throw line like that. But Giannis has to kind of know that too, and I think he did about as good a job as can be expected to test the shot and really not make too much contact with him. But Kyle Lowry is somebody that's really good at this too, and sometimes selling a foul is a elite skill that you can have in the NBA. Kyle Lowry, I've seen so many times drive down the lane. Jimmy Butler does it too. James Harden's probably the king of it. They drive down the lane and don't even hardly get touched. But you throw your arms up and fall over, and then, more often than not, they call a foul. So you kind of got to know that going into it.
Yeah, it's like you almost have to have a reputation of being able to be successful at that to even attempt it, right? So it's like how far early in your career do you try to establish, being a player that just acts like that, you know what I mean? So. And Jimmy Butler is a guy that is getting better at that, and he didn't come in as a polished offensive guy. He came more as a defensive guy. So
right.
And it was nice, though. I will say, to Giannis's credit, for him to close out the game. At least he did step out on Jimmy Butler because he got criticized a lot for, and rightfully so. I wasn't a really big fan of how when someone asked, like, "Hey, did you talk to your coach about, if you wanted to guard Jimmy Butler?" And Giannis was kind of snippy and was like, "Why would you ask that question?" Well, like, because this is basketball and you're a defensive player of the year, and this guy was hot, and you're more than capable of matching up with him, and we're in the playoffs, and you could have gone 1-0 instead of being down a game. Like, do we need to keep going as to reasons why we have to ask a professional basketball player why if he wanted to play defense against the other team's best player?
It's not like it's the NFL where, a lot of times you have a shutdown cornerback, but he plays on one side of the field because that's just the defensive, how they set it up. And that's just the strategy. Like in basketball, it's kind of like the best players guard the best players on the other team more often than not. Unless it's, I'm not going to say like Chris Paul's going to guard Jokic or something like that, but, if it's close like that, Giannis is definitely capable of staying with Jimmy Butler, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they wouldn't put him on there.
And he just got awarded Defensive Player of the Year.
Exactly. You would think he would have the, fire in his belly to want to go do that, to want that challenge. And most of the time in the NBA and in sports in general, if those guys say, get out of here, I'm guarding him, when the coach tries to say something else. How many times do we hear about LeBron in a huddle, they call a play and he's like, okay, well, this is what we're actually going to do. And, he takes the clipboard and says, you're giving me the ball. It's the same thing on defense. I want to guard him. It's at least the mentality that everybody wants their best player to have, for sure.
And you should definitely want to, like, not saying you have to guard him the entire game, like no one's asking that, but like in clutch moments, like why would you not, like with the game on the line, you're the defensive player of the year, you're probably going to be the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth do you not want to try to check Jimmy Butler to close out the game just for a possession? Just for a possession, why would you not want to do that?
I agree. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, especially in the last moments of the game. He needs to be on him for sure.
Yeah, and just real quick, and we'll move on to Houston versus Oklahoma City. I just want to say shout out to the Chicago Bulls, shout out to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and shout out to the Philadelphia 76ers, who just, for whatever reason, want to excuse away why they don't need Jimmy Butler. Is he too competitive? Does he want to win at any cost? Like, is he too abrasive? Is he coachable? Whatever excuse you want to. I'm so glad to see him in Miami. And again, this kind of reestablishes that conversation. Like, exactly how good is Jimmy Butler? Where does he fall within the kind of the rankings of the top players in the NBA? Because of, the hand in glove fit of the Miami culture and just Jimmy Butler's desire to win and have guys around him that want it just as bad as he does.
Right. And the one that really kind of irks me is Philadelphia. Everybody says they didn't want him. I see both sides to it. They offered him a max contract, but I think his real issue was with Brett Brown.
Not as many years, though. So, like, you could say max money, but they didn't want to commit for as long. That's the key.
Well, that might be the case, but I think part of it too was, I don't think he wanted to play for Brett Brown. His personality really fit with, apparently, Ben Simmons, because it seems like him and Embiid are still really close.
Yeah.
Twitter. And you would think Embiid would be the type of guy that would get on his nerves, being such a hard worker and so demonstrative. And Embiid's definitely somebody that is been called out of shape. He's been called lazy. I disagree with those statements.
Yeah, because I was going to say, remember, we talked about this not too long ago whenever, Boston.
No, I don't agree with that, but you hear it nonstop,
and it needs to stop.
From fans, from media, and everyone. And I think it's crazy. It's the same thing they used to say about Shaquille O'Neal. It's like, yeah, he's 325 pounds, but look at him. Like, he's still scoring 35 points and getting 15 rebounds. Like, what more do you want from him?
Joel Embiid is lazy. How is he averaging 30 and 12?
Exactly. If he is, then he's otherworldly good. He's so much better than people realize. It's incredible. If he's not trying hard and he's still going out and dominating like he does, it doesn't make sense.
He is an emotional player, I'll give you that. But speaking of emotional players, that's a great segue into the Houston OKC game that we got to watch prior to the one that's on today. It was a 104-100 victory for Oklahoma City. And this coming off the heels of it seeming like Houston had Oklahoma City figured out in the win that they had prior to, right, where they played off of Lou Dortz. They had, Westbrook didn't have that great of a game, but it just felt like Houston had OKC figured out. They just needed to close them out this last game. And you weren't on the show, but I told my buddy Couch Coach that I said, LeBron James called up Chris Paul and said, hey, brother, we need you to make this 7 games so we can get a little bit more rest. We're tired of these back-to-backs, you know what I mean? So I think that he called his banana boat buddy and asked for a favor, and CP3 delivered. It was a very chippy, just an exchange of glances, an exchange of, just elbows and headbutts. And yes. We'll just go ahead and get into this game. CP3 added another game to his Hall of Fame resume, 15 fourth quarter points. He ended up finishing with 28, 6, and 3 on 50% shooting from the field, 50% from deep, 100% from the line. Gallo chipped in with a lowly 25, 5, and 1 on 53% shooting from the field, only 44% shooting from deep, and 100% from the line. There were three other Thunder players in double figures. Dort had 13, Schroeder had 12, and SGA had 10. And to Houston's credit, it wasn't a big blowout by any means. Harden had a good game. Westbrook had a better game than the game before, and got a decent outing from Covington, and House is, I think, becoming one of our favorite Rockets players. Between the two of us, Austin, and he's having decent games, but it just was OKC's night. It felt like.
Hey, sorry, I lost you for a minute there.
Oh no, it's okay. Was that me or did I lose you?
I don't know. My whole screen just went black for a second, but I'm back now. Sorry about that.
Were you blacked out or was I blacked out?
We both were.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I don't know who all heard what, but basically, just to summarize what happened, it was a close game. Chris Paul had a game of to add to his resume. Gallinari had a good game. Dort had 13, Schroeder had 12, SGA had 10. And then for the Rockets part, they had James Harden had 32, 8, and 7, shot 50% from the field. Pretty bad from outside, actually. 27% from the three-point line, 3 of 11, and 87% from the free throw line. And then Westbrook had a better game than in Game 5. Had 17, 4, and 3, shot 50% from the field, 50% from deep, and missed both of his free throws. Covington had 18 points, and House, I was saying that it feels like he's kind of becoming one of our favorite Rocket players between the two of us. Every time we talk about the Rockets, we always find a way to bring in Daniel House into the conversation. And, he had 12. It just felt like it was OKC's night again, man. And this Game 7 doesn't feel like it's getting it's any easier to kind of tell the way it's going. It seems like it's going to be another fourth quarter decision.
Yeah, it's definitely it's back and forth game for sure. I think that's kind of the recipe. Oklahoma City's going to have to make it a close game. They're going to have to, dirty it up, not dirty it up a little bit, but make it a little bit more physical. They're not going to blow out the Rockets. I think if both teams play their A game, I do think the Rockets are the better team. I think they've shown that in their 3 wins. They average like 8 turnovers a game in their 3 wins and 17 a game in their 3 losses. So that's a big difference there. One thing I did want to mention about Chris Paul's game 6, you mentioned that he had the big stat line. He did all that with 0 turnovers as well. That's the 4th time in his career he's had 25 points and 0 turnovers in a playoff game. So that's pretty impressive. I just think, Houston beats themselves and Oklahoma City doesn't. They play kind of the same every game, and Houston's kind of streaky, and I think that's kind of the give and take of as many threes as they shoot. If since the season restarted, they're the worst rebounding team that's been in Orlando. And I think that's another byproduct of the small ball. But so they're not going to get a lot of second opportunities. They're not going to get a lot more out of their offense if it's not fast breaks and making threes or Harden or Westbrook getting to the free throw line. And down the stretch of that game, Westbrook had a couple turnovers that were really costly. And I found
talk about that. Go ahead, finish with that stat, and
I do have a stat for you that I thought you would like. I read this yesterday. Westbrook and Harden are a combined 5 for 41 from the field in the last minute of the 4th quarter and overtime on potential game tying or go ahead shots in their careers. And they have the 2 worst field goal percentages in those situations since they started keeping track of play-by-play data in 1997. So
that is insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. 5 of 41. They're the 2 worst ever, and they're on the same team.
That's insane.
5 of 41.
41 shots, it feels like a small sample size, but when you consider like how often you're in that particular situation, that spans seasons. It's not just for this year.
That's their whole career.
It's the entire career. So it's not that they're just putting a weird situation for a season or so. This is their entire career.
Kind of the book on both those guys for sure.
So how much blame do you put on Russell Westbrook for that Game 6 loss?
I think it's 50-50. I think it's 50-50. I think Russell Westbrook is the better player. 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 I think Russell Westbrook is the better Um, I think you have to put a good amount of the blame on him. I think as long as James Harden is on this team, he's going to get the majority of the blame no matter what happens, win, lose, or draw. He's going to get the credit when they win. And Westbrook will get some of the credit too because he is a big star as well. But I think you have to look at those turnovers as kind of the turning point in the game. You can't really say much else. You can say Harden didn't shoot well, Harden didn't do this well, but he still look at his stat line. He still scored over 30 points. He still, is doing a lot of things on
Three of
offense.
11 from deep though.
Yeah. And, I think that's what I mean. I don't think you can put it all on Westbrook. I think a lot of it goes on him, on his shoulders, on those turnovers. And I just think he has mental lapses at the end of the game. And it's like he thinks, maybe it's like he's back in Oklahoma City and has to do it all by himself. And he's kind of always been that way. Even when he had Kevin Durant with him. And I think at this point in your career, if, you've missed as many game-winning shots or tying shots as those guys have, you'd think to try something else.
So 7 turnovers, awful, right? The turnover he had at the end of the game, terrible, right? Like it's just awful.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my thing, and James Harden, I'm not trying to take away. And again, this is the only time I've ever like actually enjoyed watching Houston play, like ever. And I will say that Russell Westbrook, those 7 turnovers were awful. I'm not going to argue that. But I will also argue that he was a big reason why they were in the game in the first place. He made big fourth quarter shots to get them in the lead when Harden just kind of fizzled out in the fourth, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to get is Harden a killer? Does he want it in those situations? And the big criticism that Harden got on on the way that the game ended is that why on earth does he not have the ball in his hand to close out the fourth? Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you a question. I just want you to be honest, and I know that you will because you're just that type of dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense to have Russell Westbrook, who could probably advance the ball at the court at a 99 percentile in the NBA? He can advance the ball up the court as quick as anybody in the entire NBA can.
Mm-hmm.
And would it not be hard for the defense to play catch up with Russell Westbrook sprinting at breakneck speed up the court to then give the ball to James Harden, who is one of the best triple threat offensive players in NBA history? Mm-hmm. So you're having a defense play catch up to a sprinting breakneck pace Russell Westbrook, and you give the ball to Harden to close out the game off of a triple threat stance. Does that not seem like it would be like a recipe to try to win the game?
Yeah, not to oversimplify it, but I mean, I think it is pretty simple. Like that seems to make sense to me, and I think that's kind of where I say, Westbrook kind of makes those mental lapses. Where, I think maybe that was the plan, and he just kind of fumbled the ball out of bounds. Got a little too far down the court, and I think that's kind of the risk you take with doing it that way. Is he can get a little bit out of control, and we've seen that plenty of times in his career. And I think he knows that, and I think Houston knows that, and he's just got to, he's got to execute in that situation. I think they tried. I think honestly, from the way you described it, that's kind of what they looked like they were trying to do. He just kind of got stuck and threw the ball away.
Yeah, and right now I'm peeking over my shoulder. You can see that, but maybe the people listening don't know. I'm peeking over my shoulder, and I just saw Russell Westbrook pull up, hit the brakes on a mid-range jump shot and shot the ball over Steven Adams to give to give the Rockets a 6-point lead over the Thunder. So like these are not the moments where people are like, oh hey, look at all the good stuff that Russell Westbrook is doing. But if he turns the ball over, heaven forbid, you know what I mean? So like it just seems like it was that game. In that sequence in particular was like a perfect like encapsulation of how Russell Westbrook is on any given night. He will be a reason that you're in a game, but he could also cost you a game. And I just saw so much criticism against Russell Westbrook turning the ball over, and then for James Harden not wanting the ball. And to me, like there's a world that I could see where like why would you, like what I basically said earlier, right? Like why would you not want one of the fastest dudes that could advance the ball in closing seconds of the game and then give the ball to James Harden while the defense isn't set to allow him to take advantage and get to the free throw line to convert, maybe
Hmm.
an and one or pull up for a three or something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like I don't know. I just felt like that was picked apart a little bit too much for my
Yeah,
liking.
there's another school of thought there though, where Harden does bring the ball down most often, and he never really had a whole lot of trouble getting to the rim against a set defense anyway. And it may be the best idea to put the ball in his hands and let him, make a play, because that's what they do almost all the rest of the game. And so it can go either way. I think both of them could work, but I just think both of those guys, as long as they've been in the league and as many opportunities as they've had to, make it to the finals or win a championship, and the fact that neither of them have done it yet, that's what everybody's going to talk about. It doesn't matter what they do the first, you know, 3 quarters and 9, 10 minutes in the game. What really matters is if it's a close game, is what everybody's going to talk about is the last couple of minutes, and whether or not they even have really anything to do with it. It's going to be, did Harden and Westbrook get it done, or did Harden and Westbrook lose the game? You didn't hear nearly enough about all the great plays that Oklahoma City made at the end of the game. You hear about the bad plays Houston made, and it's kind of the same thing we talked about with LeBron and the Lakers. You give all of the credit and when they win, and they get all the blame when they lose. And sometimes, Oklahoma City is just making good plays. They've been, like you said, they had that clutch lineup. They've been one of the most clutch teams in the fourth quarter all year.
Yeah, and I see right now, I just keep peeking over my shoulder, and I see Russell Wilson, or wow, Russell Westbrook making winning plays, man, and like
Yep.
he just can't let him. All right, and now again for another series that I'm super giddy about, and like I'm
Me
almost in
too.
my "I told you so" mode, and I feel like we both have been really big fans of the Boston Celtics and the way that they've played.
Yes.
We were a little bit afraid when Goran Dragic stepped down, but you know, they have a 2-0 lead now on the defending NBA champions, and I don't hear as much of a saying like, well, this Toronto Raptors team did better than this year than they did when they had Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. Like, they could easily win a championship again this year, and
Hmm.
it's only 2-0. I could eat a big plate of crow, in about a week's time. But
Right.
it's it's looking like our team that we wanted to win is doing a good job there, Austin.
Yeah, and Toronto was in the same spot last year. They got down 2-0 to Milwaukee and went on to win 4 straight. But that team had Kawhi Leonard, and they made a big switch. They did what Milwaukee's kind of refusing to do against Miami, and put their best defender on the other team's best player, and kind of really changed the face of that series. I've said it a million times. I'm sure I've said it a million times on this show. But in the playoffs, you have to have a closer. You have to have a guy that can go and get you tough 2-point baskets in crunch time. And it definitely in game 2 of this series, Pascal Siakam faded in the big moments. I've heard so much about how all year that Nick Nurse has been grooming him to be, the Kawhi Leonard type, be that closer for this team. And you can see, at least in game 2 for sure, he played all right in game 1. Game 2, he definitely faded down the stretch of that game. And you saw, Walker had a terrible shooting night, and he made 2 big shots down the stretch. Marcus Smart didn't do anything in the fourth quarter. He made 5 threes in the fourth quarter. And, and game 1 was a little bit different. Game 1, you can see, Toronto's game plan was to get the ball out of Tatum's hands, and it was kind of the opposite. Everybody else was kind of doing everything until towards the end of the game he took over a little bit more. Whereas in game 2, he kept Boston in it until everybody else kind of woke up. And I think Kemba actually talked about that after the game. He said, in past seasons when I had a game like this, we probably got blown out. So it's awesome to have other guys with him that can pick up the slack. But I just, like I said, I think the main difference between these 2 teams is one team is relying on 2 undersized guards to hit a lot of threes, and they don't really have a go-to guy, and the other team has 2 or 3 go-to guys.
Yeah, and that's not at 100% strength either. When they have that, when they're fully healthy, they have about 4 guys that can give you those buckets, and then they have what I am calling, and I'm actually working on a piece on this, Austin, now, because I've been saying it over the past 2 games. Marcus Smart is the best glue guy in the
Hmm.
NBA, and I just keep saying it because, and what do I mean by that, right? Like, so he's not the third best player on the team. There's not even a case that you can make for him being a third best on his team,
Right.
right? He's not an MVP candidate. He's not an All NBA first, second, or third teamer. He's a
Mhm.
defensive player. Um, All NBA defensive teamer, right? And that's where he makes his money. But over the past few games, man, like he's been lights out from three. He makes timely passes. Obviously, he's a big hustle and effort and energy guy, which he can do that starting or coming off the bench. It just seems like he doesn't have to be in a certain spot to succeed, right? Where we see a
Hmm.
guy like Lou Williams who just for whatever reason thrives coming off of the bench. Marcus Smart is like, hey man, Gordon Drives was down, but it's cool because we got Marcus Smart coming off the bench who can get you 21 in game one. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? He's not a guy that we talk about that can get you 20 points in a game very often, but the very first game, that's exactly what he did.
Hmm. And he definitely, I was reading what you were saying about glue guys last night, and I was trying to think of some other guys that could challenge him for the best glue guy, and it's hard to even really think of anybody that does as much as he does for their team.
I'm working
PJ
on a
Tucker,
list. I'm working on a
PJ
list.
Tucker's one that I would maybe say the glue guy. Oklahoma City's got a couple that you could probably put in that category as well. But Marcus Smart's one of the most underrated players in the NBA. He's probably uh, should be challenging for Defensive Player of the Year, or at least be multiple time first team All Defense.
He should be
Um,
a first teamer this year
right,
for going
and
forward.
people forget too how good of an offensive player he was in college. He
Yeah.
was a superstar in college. And something that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me with this Boston team is why everyone, at least not anymore so much, but for a while, everyone was surprised at how good they were. They've got three top three picks and Gordon Hayward. They've got, if you draft well, you should expect to be a really good team within 4 or 5 years drafting that high that often.
And they're not even like extremely deep either. Like
Right.
they have maybe three or four guys that they can lean on, not on a consistent basis. Like Robert
Mhm.
Williams, we could talk about his game now. He
Right.
had
He's
he had
really shows
11
up.
points. He was 5 of 5 in the first quarter when they needed a punch. And this is a guy that over his previous 16 playoffs games scored a total of 6 points between all of those games combined.
Hmm.
And Brad Stevens is like, you know what? Enos Kanter is not going to play. Let's just put in Robert Williams. And his athleticism, his defense, his verticality are all things that
Hmm.
just really are really difficult for the Toronto Raptors to handle. And here we were saying that like, okay, if Boston struggles at all, it's going to be because they have to match up with Mark Gasol and Serge Ibaka.
Yeah, and I don't think Toronto's really used their size to their advantage at all. I mean, I know they're a kind of a new style offense. They spread the ball around a lot. I know they like to, you know, play almost five guys out a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
you would think in this series that they would try to, dominate in the paint a little bit. Daniel Theis is pretty undersized. They start four other guys that are a fairly small lineup compared to who they're compared to Toronto. But the Gordon Hayward injury definitely changes their depth a lot. They go from having arguably one of the best six men in the NBA to really having a pretty thin bench. Brad Wanamaker's played, it's pretty
He's played
here and
really
there.
good. Yeah,
Played
he's played
good,
good.
and he's
Yeah.
played a lot more minutes now than I think he has all year. And what you said about Williams is completely true too. Another cool thing I read about him is he had zero career halves where he even made 5 field goals. And in the two playoff games against Toronto, he's been 5 for 5 in either the first or second half of each game. So he's shooting better than he ever has before and playing better. And he's had some energy plays. He's had some big dunks, that have kind of got the other Celtics players off the bench a little bit. Give them some life.
Couple
Um,
blocks.
and then some things about Toronto I wanted to kind of mention too. You can't have Van Vliet and Lowry shoot as bad as they have.
Mm-hmm.
Van Vliet was 3 of 16 in the first game. I think they're like between the two of them, they're shooting like under 30% for the series, or it's like right at 30%. I don't have it right in front of me, but it's around there. And if they're going to rely on lineups that have both of those guys in there a lot, they're pretty undersized when they play both of them side by side, and they're not the greatest defenders. Lowry's a pretty good defender, but Van Vliet's definitely in there for his offense.
Well, I mean, he's also like, I'll interject here. Like Van Vliet's also a very good defender. It's just that if you're talking about matching up in this series, right, where it's hard to match up with Boston because you said they start a small lineup. So if you put Van Vliet on, Marcus Smart or Kemba Walker, then you have to do the same thing with Kyle Lowry, but you still leave your two biggest weapons in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown susceptible, and you only have one OG Anunoby to throw on those guys.
Right.
That's where the problem is.
Yeah, that's true. It's not that he's not a good defender. It's just, the matchups don't fit too well in this series for him. And, you got to give credit to Brad Stevens, too. I saw a thing about, the first series against Philadelphia. They were going against 2 or 3, subpar defenders almost all the time on the court. Philadelphia's not. Without Ben Simmons, their defense on the perimeter really suffered. And, they ran a lot of isolation, and that worked for that series. A lot of one-on-one matchups. And you can't do that against Toronto. They play hard, straight up one-on-one defense. They don't give you anything real easy. You have to move the ball a lot, and we've seen a kind of a complete shift in their offensive philosophy from one series to the next, and that just shows you how dangerous Boston is. They can beat you in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, no doubt. And when you look at this game, though, Game 2, I felt like that if Toronto lost that game, there's no chance for them in this series. And again, we talked about how, you come back with games like last year, you did the same thing against Milwaukee. Two different teams. One, it's different. They're playing against a completely different team. And two, they are a completely different team than they were that last season, right? So it's just really hard because if you look at what I keep referring to them as the winning stats, right? Let's see here. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. So the Raptors were the losing team, the Toronto Raptors, were +7 in assists. They were +5 in turnovers. They were +20 on points in the paint. And they had 1 fewer foul. They were only out-rebounded by 4.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Then you look, Celtics outscored them by 7 from the free throw line. They shot 12% better from 3. They made 4 more threes. And it's not like it was a blowout. It's just, game 1, the Celtics had the lead from beginning to end, and it was a little rough for Toronto. But the game was a lot closer in game 2. The Raptors made a lot of plays. They did a lot of what they needed to do to win that game. I think they have to feel like they let one slip through their fingers. They're not going to get a whole lot of 0 for 8 first halves from Kemba Walker.
No, not at all.
They're not going to get a whole lot of 3 points from the first 3 quarters from Marcus Smart. They had a lot of opportunities to win this game, and I'm with you. I don't think they have a chance in the series now. I think they had to get that game. We could feel like you said, we could in a week's time both be singing a completely different tune. But I've been pretty confident that I've picked Boston from the very beginning. We started doing this together. You and I both did. And, that's not easy for me. I hate Boston Celtics. I grew up a huge Lakers fan. I've always not liked the Celtics. And, I told you about my, indifference towards Jason Tatum. That's definitely changed. I always knew he was good. I kind of tried to force myself to not watch him because I don't like the Celtics, and I let my fandom definitely get in the way there. The more I watch him, the more I just love his game. He does everything well. He's stronger than I ever thought he was. He's a better defender than I realized. Shooting the lights out of the ball. He's a great free throw shooter. And, we talk about those winning plays a lot. He's another guy that has made winning plays all since the bubble restarted. And, Kemba Walker is known for making those big plays and those, turnaround, stop on a dime jumpers, like you were talking about Russell Westbrook earlier. And you have to have no conscience to be 0 for 7 from 3. 2 minutes left in the game. It's a 3-point game, and you throw up a 27-footer and just nail it. And then you get down the next time and make another big shot. And it's just, it goes to show even when he was at UConn, when he had that run in the Big East tournament and the NCAA tournament. He's kind of been known as this guy that he can just get hot, and in big moments he makes big shots.
Yeah, and I mean cardiac Kimber, right? But going back to Tatum, I get googly eyes every time I watch this dude play.
Right.
He was the guy like when I first started looking like in depth at college, basketball and how they'll translate to the pros. I had no like, and I get it, and we've talked about this before. I get how good Markel Fultz was. I did not think that he was going to be bad, and I'm glad that he's in Orlando and looking like he's going to kind of turn it around a little bit. But man, every time I watched Jason Tatum play, I saw an NBA player, like for sure, not like one of these guys like where okay, like he's got the tools to where he should be successful. I watched him and I was like, this dude is going to be a great NBA player. I felt like I was literally watching an NBA player play college, and he didn't have the expanded range, but this dude was automatic from the mid range, and he shot great from the free throw line. These are great indicators that, in the right circumstances, that he's going to be able to expand his game. He was a capable playmaker, but he was his team's best player, so he didn't average 5, 6, assists a game or whatever. Has tremendous size and was very versatile. Can play the 2 through the 4, and great rebounder, great positional size. Everything about him that I loved when I was like, oh my goodness, this dude is going to be something in the NBA. He's like far and exceeded all of those things, and he's showing me. I've done several shows and articles and whatnot where like I try to rank people. I mean, I think that's a pretty common thing among sports networks. And if you were asking me who I would pick number one overall in a fantasy draft, and it was the young guys, and including Luka Doncic, I would pick a Jason Tatum because I know for sure that I'm getting a killer clutch play, offensive talent, and I'm getting an outstanding defender right off the get. And you can just do so much more in team building with that, with all those boxes checked.
Right. And, I think if you did an under 25 team or, best 25 under 25, those guys would be 1 and 1A, honestly. And I don't think you can go wrong with either one. Obviously, Luka's a little bit, the hotter topic right now, I guess. But I think that goes to show Tatum's been just doing this for so long. I think it's kind of become, I don't want to say old hat because he is still such a young player, but you kind of expect it from him. And, I was talking with some guys on the website that I write with, and they're not really, into basketball as much as you and I are. And I said something about, Jason Tatum's been arguably the best player in the bubble since they came back. And I kind of got laughed at. They're like, he's not the best player in the league. He's played like it. And really showed up time and time again. He's scoring 30 points every night, it seems like, or if he's not, he's playing great defense, he's rebounding, he gets assists, and I think what you said was spot on. I definitely thought in college he would be, eventually be a pretty big time player in the NBA. But I think what we're seeing now is when you see a guy with all this God-given ability, couples that with an insane work ethic, because everything you hear about him is he just wants to get better. He's always in the gym. Anybody that's been able to work out with Kobe, and obviously we know about the mom mentality and all that. And
not only Kobe, work out with them, but for Kobe to be like, this dude this is the real deal.
And you can see a lot of that in his game. Like we talked about before, he's got to move a counter for a counter for a counter. He's got his offensive arsenal is just grown day in and day out. Like since he came into the league, and I kind of always I watched a little more college basketball back when he was still playing than I do now. I'm not as good as I used to be. But I always did feel like he could be a star. And Brandon Ingram was another one. I think if Brandon Ingram was a little bit more aggressive, he'd be right there too. But I'm also the guy that thought Marvin Bagley was a superstar too, and we've seen what he's done so far. So he could get there though.
I thought so. I had a theory that Boston should have tried to get him in his draft class. Yeah. And I mean, you're talking okay, like he was drafted by what team?
Sacramento.
And how many coaches have they had?
Right.
How they just changed general managers, right? Like, and yes, he's
been hurt a lot too.
He's been hurt sure, but like, do you have any sort of feeling that their training staff is anywhere substantial based off of all the other evidence and chaos that we see around this team?
Probably not, and I think that's part of it too. And he was a guy. He's one of those Duke guys, but he's. I just saw the motor that he had in college and his rebounding ability and the way he goes after the ball, and those guys tend to translate pretty well to the NBA. And I just think it's taken a little longer than I've expected. But he's. I was just going more off of the fact that he was drafted ahead of Trae Young and Doncic, and
Yeah, that doesn't help his case at all.
hurts. It doesn't look good right now, at least.
No, it certainly does not. But yeah, I'm not giving up on Bagley. I mean, because you say he's been hurt, it's not like he's been in the league and like has just been a dud. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like he's a capable player. I felt like the Boston should have tried to get him in that draft, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think the jury's still out on him, and plus, like, if you're drafted by the, I can't think of another team that if you're drafted by them, you're worried for their development. Maybe Charlotte, like.
I was going to say Charlotte. That's the other team I was thinking about.
Maybe Minnesota. I mean, because they have Wiggins and Towns and did nothing at all with those guys.
Right.
The Washington Wizards have fleshed out some good talent. The Orlando Magic had some success. So I can't think of another team though that like I would maybe the New York Knicks. Like,
Maybe the Knicks probably another one.
And
Cleveland's
Chris LeBron, if you're listening,
never had much of a track record of developing players. When Kyrie was there by himself, they didn't win anything. Cleveland kind of got a bat. They had LeBron for so long, but other than him, they've never really done much with who they've had either.
That's a fair point, but like outside of Sacramento, there may be 2 or 3 other teams that like.
Not to mention, one guy, Tatum, went to probably the best possible situation that he could get in Boston with a team that was already good with a superstar coach.
Well, no one knew that then though. Like that's the thing. Like when Tatum and Brown were brought in, like it wasn't a surefire thing that Boston was going to be what they are now. You know what I mean? Like, Brad Stevens didn't prove much on the NBA level. They didn't have they kind of did a little bit of like what you saw Golden State do when they started developing their young guys and just targeting the right dudes and bringing in veterans with some know-how and obviously the coaching is making all the difference.
Right. But so here's a kind of a cool story. I actually went to high school with a guy named Grant Linedecker who played on the Butler teams that went to back-to-back national title games. And we got tickets to games all the time. And, living down here by the school, they're almost, back then it was almost free to go to a lot of the games. And so I kind of knew when they hired Brad Stevens, I knew what he was about. I knew how good of a coach he was. And I remember seeing when they hired him, they were talking about, oh, he's kind of a bridge to the next coach. He's going to be a developmental guy that's going to, help these young guys along. And I just remember thinking he's going to be the best coach, one of the best coaches in the league in a few years. And, he's definitely lived up to that. But kind of a cool story about him, from what everybody says, is he got into coaching as like a hobby. He started as like a high school coach because, if I remember right, he was doing something else with statistics, and they needed somebody to coach the team for the year at a local high school, and that's kind of how he got his start. And it's just been been skyrocketing from that point on.
Yeah, and like I'm not a Boston. Well, I'll admit it now. Like I love watching the Boston Celtics play.
Me too.
I love their team. I love their coach. I love their GM. Like I'm not a dude that I'm from Arkansas again originally. Like I have no business liking the Boston Celtics. It's just that everything they do, man, I cannot help but just like. And again, when I watch Jason Tatum play, I'm like a teenage girl watching the Jonas Brothers. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like,
oh no, I
good at what he does.
I mean, look at me. I'm from Indiana. I'm a diehard Lakers fan. It doesn't make any sense either.
Right.
But
here
we are.
Yeah. But yeah,
this is a really close game. Sorry, I keep looking away, but
no. I feel like I'm doing the same thing. I'm waiting for the score to come up right now. Oh, yeah. I didn't see it. But yeah, it's getting into the fourth quarter, so I don't see any reason for us to hang out here for another half an hour just so we can, have the latest scoop and latest release of that. That'll be kind of where we pick up when we
Mhm.
record on Sunday, Austin. But
Well, probably the first podcast to talk about that the last game though, the Heat and the Bucks. So that's kind of cool.
yeah, it
Do a
is.
little breaking the game after hours.
Or after the emergency breaking the game reporting here
Right.
on September the 2nd. Well, at least it's the second where I'm. Well, it's still the second where you are too there,
Yep.
Austin. But
Another 26 minutes.
another 26 minutes. But yeah, and we need to get you to bed. So
Oh, I'll be fine.
yeah, there you go. But
I'm gonna stay up and watch the end of this game anyway. So.
yeah, it's. I'm not turning this off at all.
But I think we've definitely, had a good show. We've talked a lot about all these games. We've had a lot of good games to go over. I know it's fun to be back here with you. I missed last time for sure.
Yeah, and I miss you too, brother. It's good to have you back for sure, for sure. And hopefully by then we'll have the MVP that we can talk about, and hopefully we can both say, yeah, like this is what we've been saying the entire time. If it goes
Right.
any other way than Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm burning
I'd be
down.
really, really surprised.
I'm burning the internet. I don't know how I'm doing that, but I'm going to burn the internet.
We'll go storm the NBA off together.
Yes, and we're going to cough on their doorknobs.
There you go.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that does it for us here on the show. All of you who have watched and listened live or going to do so later when this episode releases tomorrow to kind of help usher in your weekend. We it's been a pleasure. We love doing this. We love the NBA, and we love talking the NBA with other people that love the NBA. So that's kind of what we do. Why we do what we do. Austin, do you got anything that you want to kind of promote with anything that you're doing for the Game Changer Sport Network?
Yeah, I'm been extremely busy with them. We just decided that this is the first year we're going to do game recaps of every playoff game from here on out. So it's just like me and one or two other guys right now. So I'm pumping out a lot of articles every other at least. But it's fun. I am working on a series about I called it the coaching carousel. I've done two of them, but like I said, I've been kind of busy doing these game recaps every game. So I'll kind of try to pick that back up as I can. I still have to do the Pelicans. I still have to do the Nets, and I still have to do the 76ers. I've got some interesting thoughts. I know we differed on some of those. So once I get those done, we can kind of go over that on the show too if you want. Go over who we think is the best fit where, and that would be interesting. But we've got a lot of good stuff going on over there. Something that we do really well, I think, that I don't see a whole lot of. If you're into hockey, if you're into racing, we have a lot of good coverage on that kind of stuff. We cover a surprising amount of professional wrestling. Which is fun for sure. I like talking with some of the guys about it there. I'm not as into it as some of them are, but we've got a lot of great talented guys over there, so definitely go and check us out.
Excellent stuff, yeah. And I've read some of your work, man, and I've seen the site and the merchandise and stuff like that. You promote it, just as well as you do here on the show, and I have no doubt that there is appreciative of your work as I am.
Well, I hope so. Thank you, and I definitely appreciate you giving me an opportunity to do this with you every week, man. I love it.
Yeah, man, it's been a blast. Having a co-host is whatever worries that I had. Yeah, I mean, I knew that there were going to be like immediate benefits, but whatever worries that I had, you just have to have the right dude, man. And I think that we have a good synergy in working with each other. But as for myself, for those watching and listening, obviously I'm affiliated with the Off the Ball Network, and I think it's cool though that we're affiliated with different websites and stuff like that. We can still get together and have a great show and do things like that, man. But I'm working on, like I said, that Glue Guy of the Year award. I have about 18 players. Yeah, it's a neat one because it's kind of like an obscure.
It is, but it's something that I've heard plenty of debates about and arguments about. So it's something I like talking, I like thinking about and talking about too. Ever since I saw your post about it last night, I've been trying to think who could beat Marcus Smart in this thing, and I'm at a loss for sure.
Yeah, I've gone through and looked at the rosters, and not every team has a candidate. Like I said,
that's for sure.
There's 18 players, and obviously there's 30 teams, so there's going to be some snubs, I'm sure, by some fan bases or whatever. But if you want to argue that that Bobby Portis should be the Glue Guy of the Year candidate, you can just kind of go somewhere else with that. And that's saying something because he's from Arkansas, he played at Arkansas, and I'm an Arkansas fan, so I can say that. But I'm very much looking forward to that. I've actually been prodded a little bit to be like, hey, I'm demanding a list because if you're going to claim that Marcus Smart's the guy, like I need to see who his contemporaries are. So
Right.
it's a fun little piece that I'm working on. But
Hmm.
yeah, check me out there on offtheballnetwork.com. I have about 4 or 5, maybe 6 articles already published up there. I'm doing a lot of
Nice.
draft coverage and I myself did kind of a coaching carousel type thing. I think I termed
Hmm.
it coaching matchmaker.
Right.
Some of those are already being shot down. Like Jay Wright had come out and already said, like, I'm not interested in Philadelphia. But part
Yeah,
of being
but
a
we've heard that
matchmaker,
before.
yeah, part of being a matchmaker though is saying like who would be best suited to be there. Not like
Right.
I'm. It's not coaching crystal ball like
You
who you
always have
think
to
is
give
going to be
yourself
there.
an out. That's how I do it too.
Yeah,
You
full
don't
finish
say this is what they're
statements.
gonna do. You say this is what they should do, or
Yeah,
and you're not really wrong.
exactly. And I still think that Jay Wright would be a great coach
Oh,
for
I agree.
Philadelphia. And yeah, I'm still not in love with that D'Antoni in Indy. I think if he goes anywhere, it should be New Orleans. And I'm kind of even thinking a little bit now about Brooklyn. I think Brooklyn would be a great D'Antoni destination.
I just think the Pacers have the right roster for his system, and I think at least in their history, they like to make kind of big time coaching hires to a certain extent. They don't go after a whole lot of unknowns, at least past year.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, maybe that may be something that they need to look into doing though, for sure though. But yeah, so just check Austin's workout at the Game Changer Sport Network. Check out the work that we're doing at Off the Ball Network, and you know we just appreciate all the support and the love that we get from you guys. Cracking 400 downloads last month was just insane. Let's see if we can do better.
hmm
Um,
I think we
for
can.
this month, yeah, and we'll keep pumping out the work and we'll keep promoting the mess out of it and just ask that you guys if you like it, let us know. You can let us know at Twitter at BTG NBA Pod or at Instagram at BTG NBA Pod. You can also email us. I would love to have that dialogue, and I'm sure Austin you would as well, right? With the fans on the show, you can just email us at breakingthegamepodcast@gmail.com. And Austin, I haven't told you this. I'm going to kind of unveil some news here for you
Cool.
so you can be just as excited as the listener. I'm actually working on a website specifically for our podcast.
Nice.
So
That'll
we,
be awesome.
yeah, I got to get with you kind of offline
Hmm.
as far as what we want to do with that. But,
For sure.
we're working on that. I think it would be a great place where we can both direct people to kind of interface with us a little bit more on a personal
Right.
level.
Yeah,
And
I love it when people, if you're listening or you're watching or doing this live, comment in on Facebook. We'll discuss whatever you have to talk about, or if you want to add your point in. Like a couple weeks ago, we had 2 or 3 people, comment in during the show, and I had a lot of fun with that. So, we're always open to anybody's, back and forth. We always want to talk about this stuff.
yeah, and I'm not as sensitive as Austin could be, so if you want to throw criticism my way, you can do that.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
All in good fun, Austin. But yeah, that's gonna do it for us here on the show. We appreciate it. You, the audience, viewers and listeners alike, have been awesome. We've been your co-hosts, and we will catch up with you guys next time. Much love, everybody.
Have a good one.